So to give family members hope in seeing mom's still there, she's still in there and she still has her memories and her values.
Hi, Tiffany. So this is Tiffany Ramirez, founder and creative director of Artisan Mind. Thanks so much for taking the time to join us and talk with us here at Dementia Spring.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So do you mind starting off by telling me a little bit about Artisan Mind and all of the great things that you've been up to?
Sure. So we are a nonprofit and we are dedicated to nurturing the strengths, hope, and joy and dignity of individuals living with memory loss through creative and spiritually engaging experiences. We do a lot of art observation through a program we call Art Reveals. And through that observation, we get the opportunity to see what art reveals about each individual, their personal interests, histories, memories, ideas. And then we also do art-enhanced Bible studies to use art as a way to keep people connected to their sense of hope and strength and perseverance. And then the third thing that we do is we work one-on-one with individuals, finding out what makes that person tick, what gives them a sense of purpose and meaning, and then we develop a curriculum, a creative curriculum, and meet with them individually to give them, something to look forward to in their weeks.
Well, it sounds like so many different facets and ways to encourage somebody to both build community and find more within themselves too.
Yeah, well said.
What inspired you to start this?
So my grandfather had Alzheimer's, and I was very, very blessed that he funded my art education. So way back when I was getting ready to go to college and his cognition was declining, he had no idea what his granddaughter was going to do with an art degree, with a fine arts degree. He started a steel factory back in Pennsylvania. So, a fine arts degree was something very foreign. He just totally believed in me anyway. And I got to have a really special art education and got a fine arts degree. And I was involved in the fashion industry for a number of years, also did jewelry making, but always drawn to painting and really just taking in artwork. And I thought, art has done so much more for me in my life. I wonder if I could just help people more than this. How can I use this lifetime of art and creativity and inspiration in a way that would help others? And my grandfather came to mind, and I thought about a mobile art program for people who couldn't get there. And little by little, doors just kept opening. And before I knew it, I had the opportunity to present my idea to a hospice organization that we launched a program that was the Art Liaison Project, and started creating one-on-one programs after I had done some training for individuals living on hospice to help them stay connected, using art to help them stay connected to things that were meaningful in their lives.
What does that program kind of look like now? So if you're working one-on-one with a client, what's that journey like in working with
Yeah.
a client?
Well, just like, I know so many people in the dementia world know, that one person with dementia, if you know one person with dementia, you know one person with dementia. And so each program is really customized based on an individual's interests. We often take hints from what makes a person thrive and gives them a sense of meaning and purpose from a family member or a fiduciary or a caregiver, anyone who can give us information. But then as we use art observation, oftentimes preferences and memories will come to the surface, and then we follow those threads to then continue to create those one-on-one sessions. For instance, sharing with one client this beautiful painting of a garden. She started talking about how much she loved to garden and how it gave her such a sense of purpose to garden, and how she actually liked to garden in her bare feet. So that gave us all kinds of hints of, well, we need to get her outside and get her toes in the dirt, because that sensory memory came back just by our, observing a painting of a garden. And then for her, we kind of expanded that, and like I said, follow the thread, and got window boxes and looked at other paintings of gardens and asked her opinions and which flowers she liked the best and what did she want to grow. We'd go on outings to gardens. That was really her, like the thing that brought her to life. So each person has a little bit of a different story, and each individual session is customized based on kind of really what we learn. Find the strengths and follow the threads.
I love that. Find the strengths and follow the threads. That's perfect.
One of the reasons why our Art Reveals collections and our Art Enhanced Bible studies work so well in supporting people's hearts and faiths and spirits is that because both creativity and faith don't require cognitive understanding. It's actually more soothing when the intellectualism is out of the way. So by nurturing those areas of a person, we actually have kind of an avenue to connect with their heart that doesn't require their brain to quite understand. And how perfect for somebody with memory loss. That doesn't matter.
How is it, I think that's a great segue, how is it for perhaps the caregivers, either familial or friends or loved ones, or the formal caregivers perhaps in a residential setting, how has their response been when they, see their loved ones participating in the programs? What has that been like?
One time we were looking at a painting that was very, very abstract, and we were in a group setting, and the woman told me that it reminded her of rivers running down a mountain, just squiggly lines. So I asked her if she could tell me more. And she said, well, the rivers are running down the mountain and they're in Venezuela. So I thought, really? So again, I'm going to follow that thread because that's a pretty particular thing to say. So I asked her if she'd ever been to Venezuela, and she looked at me so matter-of-factly and said, well, I grew up in Venezuela. And she said, those rivers were running down the mountain behind the village where I grew up. And her daughter was sitting there, and granted, this woman had not said one thing the first 45 minutes of the session. In fact, she really wanted nothing to do with me or the group. And this painting brought out the rivers in Venezuela to her, and her daughter sat there nodding her head with a little tear and said that she hadn't seen her mom say so many words in months. So she put this connection together of where she came from and what mattered to her. So to give family members hope in seeing mom's still there, she's still in there and she still has her memories and her values. Mm-hmm. And then if we were in a setting where it was more about the professional caregiver, that's really good information for them to have that, Zelda grew up in Venezuela, and that is a very special memory. And if that brought her out of her shell on that day, maybe one day when Zelda does not want to go to dinner and does not want to get dressed and is maybe having some anxiety, maybe images or pictures or touchstones of things that could help connect her to Venezuela might soothe her and bring her comfort. One woman had lived in a memory care community and she hated the art classes. So she wanted nothing to do with art. And she's very, very intellectual. So we steered her projects towards lifelong learning. So we used photographs and images out of National Geographics to inspire her and to find out which pictures she'd like. And then we would explore different regions, or, we went to Egypt one day, and then I used the computer to do the virtual tours to take her there. So it's still creative and visually inspiring, but for her, the intellectual piece was so important.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
And then for another woman, her faith is crucial, and she just wants to see pictures of Jesus. She wants to tell about Jesus. She wants to read her scriptures. She has her bed lined with her devotionals, and each image and devotional that we'll bring in supports her spiritual life and gives her this, this desire to share, which fills her purpose and her heart and her spiritual life. So it's very different depending on each person.
Sure. How wonderful to provide that outlet for her to express that spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
Also.
Yeah.
think that's something that can be limited sometimes within assisted living. And so how wonderful to provide
Mm-hmm.
that. And it sounds like you've kind of answered this question in your story, wonderful stories that you've just shared, but curious like what the response has been, how the people living with dementia have responded to your programs, both, it sounds like these are a lot of the one-on-ones. How about in like group settings, perhaps?
The difference in group settings is there's the community and the
Mm-hmm.
social experience where people will bounce different ideas off of each other, and one person's memory might stir somebody else's memory. Just last month, one painting, it was very, very snowy and very, very wintry. It's called The Magpie by Monet. And one gentleman remembered that he had grown up in Chicago and started to tell stories about Chicago. And what happens when somebody remembers where they came from and what was important to them, their whole disposition will change. They will start talking more confidently. They will sit up straighter. They will seem more cognitively aware. So that connection of, what paintings will kind of inspire is so interesting.
It really shows like just the power of art and reminiscing, and I mean, so inspiring to hear you talk about this, and you can tell how passionate you are about the work that you do. And I just can imagine the life that you're bringing in, and the joy that you must be bringing to these folks too. I imagine it's so incredible
And
to
I walk out walking on a cloud too. So they bring me, I mean, they do just as much for me. It's definitely mutual.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us here at Dementia Spring. We're so inspired by the work that you do and feel so honored to have you spend some time with us and learn more about the work you're doing.
Oh, thank you, Laurel. I appreciate the time too. And yeah, thanks for the interest.